Okay, so this is me kind of shifting gears a little. I mean, it's Comic Con is basically past, and there aren't really any new movies in theaters that I'm really too anxious to go out and see. So, so what I think I'm gonna do is do something new to my channel called. Well, it's not really a term that I patented, obviously. I mean, I'm going to do a movie marathon. I'm going to look back at a bunch of movies from and and basically one by one see how they hold up and give my own personal opinions on them and so forth. And in my opinion, it's kind of fitting that I start this segment with one of the most influential and recognizable and iconic film series of all time, which is, of course, Star Wars. I mean, basically, I'm gonna since I was shown the Star Wars movies, um, in the order that they were released, like 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna basically do it like that, and I might actually tackle some of the spin-off TV shows and video games, depending on how everything goes. So, with that said, Star Wars, the original Star Wars in 1977, or as it's become known nowadays, Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. Um, yeah, not really a whole lot to say about this one that hasn't really been said already. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what I can add, to be honest, because well, let's start with how it became successful. I mean, or as successful as it was. I mean, it's basically a mishmash of all these different genres into this one fictional setting. I mean, it's a western, it's a samurai flick, it's a sci-fi flick, it's a movie serial. I mean, it's kind of like the Flash Gordon serials. I mean, right down to the opening scroll text. So and there's probably more genres in there, to be honest. I mean, it's a creature feature. I mean, all of these different movie genres have kind of come together into this one space epic, and as a result, it's accessible to that wide to that wider audience. I mean, fans of westerns can go in and get elements of a western. Fans of samurai flicks can go in and get elements of a samurai flick. I mean, it's just that accessible. I mean, and not only that, it creates this big, expansive world that is just ripe for expanding upon, ripe for exploiting your imagination. I mean, it really is a vast and at times pretty eye-popping world that George Lucas created back in '77. So the basic story is that there was this group of warriors. I'm not even sure if there's much point in telling the story, because the story has just become so well known. I mean, it's so ingrained in pop culture. But the story is there were these warriors, these sacred warriors called the Jedi, who basically defended the galaxy from and maintained peace and justice. But at this point, the galaxy is under the rule of the evil Empire, who wiped out the Jedi with the help of this big evil guy who was actually a former Jedi, and his name is Darth Vader, and he basically spearheads all of the Empire's military operations, and yeah, he's a bad dude. He's like this big cyborg guy with a deep, intimidating voice. He can choke people with the Force, the mystical energy field that Jedis use called the Force. So the Jedi are gone. I mean, I mean, they are few and far spread. So then, the rebels store information in these two robots, these two droids, and the droids get sent off to Tatooine, this desert planet, where they come into the possession of a farm boy named Luke Skywalker, whose father was apparently a Jedi, as revealed to him by an old hermit named Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was also a former Jedi. He served with Luke's father, Anakin Skywalker, in this time called the Clone Wars. So, and Obi-Wan basically tells Luke, you need to become a Jedi. You need to help me restore peace and order to the galaxy. And along the way, they meet colorful characters like Han Solo, played by Harrison Ford. Princess Leia of the Rebel Alliance, played by Carrie Fisher. And they actually do come across a massive moon-sized space station constructed by the Empire that is capable of wiping out an entire planet with one blast. So their basic job is to stop the Empire and bring the Jedi back into the galaxy. So at this point, almost 30 years, more, I mean, a few decades after this movie was released, this basic story has become so well known that watching the original Star Wars, it almost seems cliched. I mean, the story of this naive individual who realizes he has great power and has to overcome this evil ruling power. I mean, it's really ground that has been well tread at this point. But watching what Star Wars did and how it did it right. I mean, what did it do right, and what did it really bring to this old story? Well, the acting. I mean, the acting is, I don't want to say great on all fronts, because there are some weaker performances, but some of the veteran actors who really managed to leave an impression. I mean, like Sir Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, he's the best part of the movie. He has this kind of mischievous undertone, but at the same time, you can tell that he's very wise, very collected. David Prowse is very imposing as Darth Vader, although you never see him, obviously, because he's under the helmet, under the suit. I mean, I believe he played Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster at one point. Not the actual Dr. Frankenstein, but speaking of Frankenstein, Peter Cushing is also very good as this commander-in-chief, or governor. I mean, he basically heads the operations on the Death Star, the evil space station. I mean, he's this very militaristic, almost Nazi-esque character who believes that everything not in the Empire is just below him. I mean, he has progressed so far through the ranks that he is so used to looking down at people. I mean, he even looks down to Darth Vader to a certain extent. I mean, Darth Vader could kill him. I mean, Peter Cushing has no knowledge of the Force, but basically the Emperor put him in charge of the Death Star operations, and as long as Darth Vader is on there, I guess he must obey, or basically he can't overrule Peter Cushing. So we have them. Who else? James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader, because obviously David Prowse does not have that imposing voice. That is the voice of James Earl Jones, and he is intimidating. Not only is he intimidating, but you can sense that there's this deep sorrow in his voice, but at the same time, he so cleverly meshes that with this real kind of imposing menace. I mean, you believe that this voice comes out of someone that big and that powerful. But at the same time, it manages to sound somewhat artificial, to kind of complement the mechanized breathing that he does. Almost like the voice, part of the voice is coming from the machine. So yeah, I really have to give props to some of the older actors in this movie. And the younger actors are definitely the weak points in my opinion. I mean, not that they are bad, but they are definitely not as strong. I mean, Mark Hamill, especially recently, has proven that he is much more comfortable as a voice actor than as a screen actor. I mean, he's one of the best voice actors out there. I mean, he is so talented in that regard. But as a screen actor, he's strictly okay. I mean, he plays the naive farm boy reasonably well, but where he really becomes slightly petulant when, and kind of annoyingly so, when his uncle won't let him pursue his dreams and go to the academy, register for the academy. It never really specifies what the academy is for. I mean, what the academy trains them to do. I assume it's to go into the Empire, but then later in the movie you see Luke's friend in the Rebel Alliance who supposedly he also went to the academy. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of vague. I mean, it's little details like that if you took a nitpick chisel, as it were, you could probably pick this movie apart piece by piece. But it's a good movie. You don't care. I mean, you get invested enough in these characters, and invested enough in this story and this world. I mean, you are sucked in by this world enough to where you don't feel any desire to nitpick. I mean, you don't feel any desire to look for plot holes. So Mark Hamill, thankfully he does improve over the course of these movies. I mean, he does give a very soulful performance by the end of the original trilogy. I mean, and there is a clear progression in that regard. I mean, it's not sudden. So in a way, it's kind of a blessing, albeit a mixed blessing, that he is so, I don't want to say childlike, but he does have this kind of chip on his shoulder in this one. So yeah, he's all right. I mean, Carrie Fisher, kind of perplexes me. I mean, I just got through nitpicking, or talking about not nitpicking this movie, but her accent confuses me. I mean, she seems to be doing this kind of half British, half American accent. It's kind of like this hybrid. And it's kind of distracting at first, because she's trying to be all regal toward basically people in power, like she talks to Peter Cushing with this kind of half Britishy accent, this kind of attempted authoritative accent, an authoritative tone of voice. She talks to Darth Vader like this. She talks to I think that's about it. But then whenever she's interacting with our main characters, like Luke and Han Solo, I mean, she switches over to this kind of everyday American accent, and it's really and she too is kind of becomes slightly irritating. I mean, especially when she's nagging. I mean, I hate I hate to use that word when talking about a female character, but it's true. I mean, she constantly backseat drives when she interacts with the main characters in this. I mean, she's like, oh, they let us go. Oh, you don't know what you're doing, do you? And it gets a little old. I mean, they do it a few times too much, in my opinion. But Harrison Ford, who I've really turned on in the past few years as being extremely limited. I mean, he is limited to the one or two roles that he frequently plays, and he does play them well. I mean, I'm not saying that he cannot pull off a performance, but the thing is, Han Solo and several variations of Han Solo and Indiana Jones are basically the only roles that he has played, with a few exceptions. I mean, like in 42, 42 was an exception, but for the most part, like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, The Fugitive, several other movies, like even in his older years. I mean, he still kind of does that kind of gruff, like or kind of snarky, cocky character. I mean, he's still kind of. I mean, right now he just plays an older version of that. So yeah. I mean, these characters basically have the same. I mean, in regards to Han Solo and Indiana Jones, they basically have the same kind of. I don't really want to say the same personality, but they have the same kind of quirks. They have the same kind of reactions to situations. Like when it comes to fight or flight, they will most definitely fight if the odds are in their favor, but they will not hesitate to choose flight. So I'm not making much sense, but yes, the main actors are definitely the weaker points. But again, they are not quote unquote weak. I'm just saying that they are weaker when compared to the veteran actors like Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing and James Earl Jones. I mean, they are not bad, but again, when you stick them next to these older guys, you can kind of see that they don't they are not as good. So as for the pacing, if you already know the story, I mean, if you already know the story, I'm not even saying that if you've seen the movie before, but if you already know the story, the pacing is kind of slow at the beginning. I mean, especially when R2 runs away. I mean, you kind of thinking, come on, pick it up, chop. But it never becomes sluggish. I mean, you're never going, I am so bored out of my mind. I mean, at most you just kind of go, come on, let's step it up. So with that minor problem, the pacing, there's really not too many other flaws aside from some of the. Okay, I have to address the digital edits that happened in the special edition. I'm sorry. Han did shoot first, but that's only because he was the only one to shoot. I still stand by the fact that Greedo never got a shot off. I mean, Han just shot him because Greedo was going to shoot Han. That was the essence of the scene. That was all you really needed. But George Lucas and whoever else was involved with this change, possibly only George Lucas, was so concerned with Han Solo being a bad role model for kids that he just tossed away common logic. You wouldn't. I mean, if you and some other guy were pointing guns at each other, you wouldn't let the other guy fire and then just casually move your head to the side. I mean, that looked ridiculous. And to be fair, they did kind of try to fix it in the second special edition for the DVDs, but still, you have this thing where Han does not do what you expect him to do, what he would do in that situation, which is just fire his gun before the other guy can fire his. But as for the other things in this movie, I was really impressed by the creature designs. I mean, you have never seen creatures quite like this. I mean, and it really sells this kind of illusion of a galaxy long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, because these monsters are just so original. Not monsters. These aliens are just so original in design and so unique and so inspired. Honestly, any aspiring conceptual artist can just look at the scene in the Mos Eisley Cantina, like the bar on the desert planet. They can just look at that scene and look at all of these varied designs, and just get all sorts of ideas. Wow. I mean, I really have to give props to the design team. And real quick, getting back to the digital cut, or the digitally enhanced cut of this movie, there was one scene that I did like. I mean, there was one thing that I think actually improved the overall story, and that was the meeting between Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt. In the original cut, I believe, I could be mistaken, but in the original cut, Jabba was not in it. I mean, it was a deleted scene. I mean, but then, in the original cut of Return of the Jedi, and in all subsequent cuts, pretty much, Jabba takes up about a third of the movie. So there's really that kind of there's really that sense of, where did this guy come from? I understand they kind of mentioned him several times in Empire Strikes Back, but you never really got a true introduction to the character until Return of the Jedi. This, I don't want to say it's foreshadowing, but it does kind of connect some of the dots. I mean, it does kind of fill in some of the vague spaces. I mean, you see Han Solo negotiating with Jabba, you see him make this deal, you see that they have this kind of mutual distrust between them. And I liked it. I mean, despite the fact that the digital Jabba doesn't really hold up very well, it was really bad in the 90s, in the 90s VHS special edition, but that, to be fair, they did kind of improve it, kind of make him look a little grittier, a little dirtier, and they kind of fix up some of the color schemes to make him more consistent with the really slimy, gluttonous thing that we saw in Return of the Jedi. So yeah, don't really know what else I can say about this one, but except the characters are likable enough. I mean, the story throws you for just enough. I don't want to say throws you for loops, but there is enough here that you will want to see this story. Even if you've seen it many times before, you will want to see this story, because it is told fairly well, and it introduces you to this very interesting world with a lot of interesting creatures and a lot of interesting sets. The sets are just so large and expansive. I mean, they look like these planets. I mean, I think they filmed in Tunisia for the Tatooine scenes. I mean, there's just that little bit of authenticity that goes a long way when you're filming on location. I mean, it's like in Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson filmed the bulk of the outside scenes in New Zealand, his home. So I guess Lord of the Rings was kind of a home movie in that regard. But anyway, so yeah, there's the effects. Some of them look a little dated, I admit. I mean, the lightsaber kind of looks a little dated. I mean, I heard they used a wooden stick for the lightsaber. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong because I haven't looked it up in years. But the lightsaber does look kind of flat at this point. I mean, it doesn't really, but it doesn't take you out of it. I mean, the effect is not so bad that it takes you out of it. You're not looking at it going, "Wow, that looks really, really fake and stupid." No, it's just a little. It's just a little thing you notice that's probably not as mind-blowing as when the movie first came out. But with that said, a lot of the effects really do hold up. Like I said, the sets, the aliens, the aliens that were achieved using practical effects. The lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, that still holds up. I mean, there are people who are saying that they're moving as slow as slugs. The point of the scene was not to be this very flashy, very physical sword fight. It was to further develop the past relationship between these two characters. So yeah, it's a good movie. It's a genuinely good movie, and it's a pretty solid start to a franchise this big. I mean, if you haven't seen it already, I don't know what kind of rock you've been living under, but you should go see it. You, at the very least, you will get a familiar. Even if you don't want to, even if you would complain that this story is too familiar these days, you will still get a solid retelling of it. I mean, it's a nice, easily accessible, basic story that is told well with good characters, good action, good sets, really good design. I mean, the designs are very inspired. I probably said that a million times in this video, but it's true. And yeah, it definitely it definitely makes you want to know more. It makes you want to experience the next chapter in the saga. So, yeah, that's really all I got for Star Wars Episode 4. No, I'm just calling it Star Wars. That's what it is. That was the original title. Star Wars. It's good.